beauty of the earth.
You both were charter members then. Do you remember the day you chartered? I
I
got the charter in the
See,
parlor.
Vern was born in 1950, so he was.
But Charter Sunday, you had about 60 people who signed the charter. Yeah. Why did you decide to start a new congregation? What was it what were the forces that helped the congregation begin?
But it wasn't a lot of young folks out here, and they came to Bethany and asked us to leave Bethany and come here to start this church. And that's all I remember, was because there were so many people out here, and they felt like that we needed a church out here.
Well, everybody would recognize that Turner and Ruth were the instruments of, because the church became available and they got interested and called around and got a group together. And we were going all the way across town, we were going across the river. We had to go across the river to go to church to 7th Street. And you know that river is a dangerous thing to cross.
I know. Yeah, it's hard to get across that river sometimes.
I thought about it 50 years ago. We thought, well, we want a church a little bit closer to us. We had been in church in Lynchburg and had to drive 10 miles. Well, 10 miles is nothing to anybody now. But when we had 4 children who were involved in youth and choir and so forth, going that 10 miles was quite a bit. So we thought, well, we need something here.
My husband's grandfather built that building.
Oh, really? The whole building? Oh, my goodness.
The initials up in the tower.
The day that I walked in this door was probably the first Sunday that they had a summer program, Linwood. Well, I came in and I sat a couple pews from the back. I remember Bill Phelps sat in front of me though. And all at once Linwood this preacher came down and he said a blessing and we were dismissed. When I came out, I said, I certainly like this church. I said, that's the shortest sermon I ever heard.
Church. Well, I think we need to remember and be very thankful to Bethany. It's true, they left Bethany. But Tommy Kearns, the pastor at the time, was extremely supportive of this move. As were all the other ministers in the area. This was a act of the state at that time.
And you did a lot with the teenagers, didn't you?
Huh?
Didn't you do a lot with
Yeah, I
the
tried.
Well, we wanted a church that our children could think of as a beginning church. We had always belonged to churches that were 100 years old, Raymond and I both had. And we thought, well, this is a great opportunity for our children who were then 5 to 12. So, and I think the 3 girls are still very active in their churches. And it's because of this church. They just remained that way. So truly, we went to all the other churches before we came here. We really did.
Well, we did too.
But there wasn't any question when we came. This was where we belonged.
You've got to remember at that time when this church was started, the shopping center where John Crank's store is out here now. I hunted quail in that field. There was nothing there. Then you skipped and went all the way out to what is the top of the hill with Midlothian then. But you know, it's filled in all the sense. But I could see that the necessity for having a church here, with the idea that somewhere along the line you're going to fill up from here to Midlothian, was a pretty good move, I guess.
Well,
And Mabel, you came from Bethany, right? You
Yeah.
remember over at Bethany.
We had stopped, chosen to change because with 3 children, they wanted to go to everything over there. We were crossing the river too many times.
Barbara and I were walking down Buford Road and thinking, I think now about walking down Buford Road for a pleasure walk. And the doors, it was on a Saturday, and the doors of the church were open, and it looked very inviting. It looked very pretty. And I said, well, why don't we try there tomorrow? And we looked on the sign, and it said Disciples of Christ, and we were, you know, is it Pentecostal? What exactly are we getting into? And we came, and people were so friendly. And I've always thought it was the same day. And Barbara and I were talking about it earlier. I don't know if Mabel would have gone home on a Sunday and baked a loaf of bread, but in my mind it always seemed like it was Sunday, and she showed up with the warm bread and really won us over.
Well, you have always been one of those people that has really welcomed people.
Yes.
And one of the stories that I've heard from a number of people is why they came here, and it had to do with your bread.
Oh,
The Bancrofts.
Yeah.
I should be making more of it.
Your welcoming and your bread that welcomed them as well.
Yeah.
So that was a great idea. I'm going to ask you another question.
Yeah.
And that is, what were the greatest challenges? And it doesn't have to be just at the very beginning. Through the years, what do you think have been the greatest challenges? In the beginning, what were the greatest challenges as well?
To get together enough money to pay the minister.
Right.
Not just the
Really
minister, the light bill
Yeah.
and the heating bill.
You can see Art Crowder coming around. Ask, can you make a little more? We don't have enough to pay Carl right now.
And getting money, but you would have been horrified at what we paid the minister. You wouldn't have been able to afford that convertible. But we had to meet. But the budget was, it's escaped from now whether it was that but there were like $28,000 for the budget, things of that sort.
All the things though that was negative to this church early on was the basement. If you ask anybody in this church, anybody, number one problem with this church, basement. It stunk. It had mold on it. We had 57 coats of paint on it. I can remember Art Crowder coming around at 9 o'clock knocking on the door. If you got any paint, I don't care whether it's oil-based, latex, what. He dumped them all together, and we'd go downstairs and smear the walls. And to try to get a new person coming in looking at the church, they liked the nice little niceties of the upstairs, but where did the kids go to Sunday school? That did it. We'd lose them every single time. So it was the quest of everybody in this church eventually to have someplace that kids could go that wouldn't get mold on them.
We had a problem with the basement of the moisture, the rain, and they had and we'd come here dressed up in coat and tie and be down there mopping up water for the Sunday school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the little Sunday school room that I think is maybe under here.
Yeah.
That was next to the door, and of course the French drain was outside of the door, so that one filled up with water a lot.
Yeah.
So we'd come and sweep it out and mop it out, and then tell the children hello after quite dry.
I asked Greg what he remembered about attending this church. And he said, I remember the wet basement. And they put the children down there because we were told that that's where they had their
Nursery.
Nursery.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think has helped Bonnier Christian Church succeed?
This friends of mine.
Friendliness.
It's this is it. Every time I open my mouth, I say the friendliness of this church. You just can't come in or go out that you don't feel it. The support. I don't mean they have to be financial or materialistic. It's just something about our church.
Even when we all got that church, had so many things had to be done to it. And we everybody worked on it, and we thought we had it pretty nice.
I think they did a
But I'm
great
so
job
glad,
making it
and I'm
larger.
so glad it's grown so. It's wonderful. You did it.
I think a lot of people did it. A lot of people.
You did it.
You did most.
So I was a visitor in the Sunday school class, and Cliff was on this side and Ron was on this side.
Right.
And they had very different opinions
Oh, yeah.
about the story of the loaves and the fishes. And I thought, well, this is just going to be warfare here. Let me kind of scoot my chair out. And at the end of the discussion, they both looked at each other and said, well, I understand how you think and what you believe, and I respect your opinion. And the other said the very same thing. And to me, that was phenomenal. I had never been in an environment like that you could have different theology, but yet kind of wrapped in love, I would say.
Oh, we turned that down.
I think one of the nicest things about our church is that it's used for some community meetings that would not take place if it didn't have free
Usage.
eating room.
But Judy,
So can you tell me a little bit about the building, what it looked like then?
Oh, it was a nice, cute little building, and I hate to see it changed.
I saw a picture of it this morning in the room I was sitting in.
Every time I go by it, I think that's not our little church.
Well, I think they did a grand job.
They
making
did it. It's
larger, and it needed to be made larger.
it's
We had
beautiful,
to
and
do
they
it.
needed to enlarge it. But every time I think about it, as that little church. And Debbie said,
Well, I think that helping people feel at home,
Well, see,
with the new people. Now, being in the choir, you can't get there, but when I'm sitting in the with Phil, when I meet new people, we try to be friendly to the new people, and I've been giving vegetables to them. But anyway, I think this church has really been friendly.
I think as we say this, we talk about individual people. The first Sunday we came, standing at the door was Art Crowder at this back door here, standing here and greeted people. And we went through the service and we were going home, and Ellen said, well, that's a church I want to go to. And we said, well, why, Ellen? She said, because they have a Lem Bennington there. Well, Lem Bennington always stood at the back door of the church in Lynchburg and greeted people. Everybody that came, he was there and greeted them. And so she saw Art Crowder as that sort of person here. But it really told what the church was about, I think. Individual people standing out to do what needed to be done.
you remember when they all went to Mass's Mill, all the men?
No.
When they had the flood? I don't remember what year it was, but they all went up there and helped, because they got flooded out and everybody's stuff was ruined.
And where is that?
Mass's Mill, isn't it the other side of Roanoke?
I don't know.
Yeah,
So would they
the
help, was it a church they
whole
helped?
church thing, and all the boys went.
Huh.
Burned. They stayed up there a whole weekend, and Art and Hawthorne and I don't know who else from the church, but it was a church-related thing.
Names and
Well,
names.
I've heard the term church family all my life, but I never really knew what a church family was. I've got 50 to 100 people that would come to my aid or to care for me. It's just the most wonderful feeling, and it really is. It is a family.
It was
Juanita, you had something to say.
I was just gonna say, I don't think we can talk about why the church has been successful without giving Cindy an awful lot of praise for that. She's been with us 20-some years, and she's preached good sermons, and she's wonderful in times of need, and the church has really grown, you know, during her ministry, and I think that's a big reason for our success.
And you might not realize it, but a lot of our time is spent sitting in hospitals.
What are the greatest accomplishments of this congregation?
Now, most of you sitting there won't admit it, and you will. I think when you added that fellowship hall, I mean, let's face it, we had some tough times cooking and trying to fit people in this room for dinner. And it really was just, we felt like we were just really cooking on the front burner when we got that nice kitchen in the hall.
Well, having been on the long range committee when all that was done, that's due to Cindy.
But of course, my love, I think, was when they added a Sunday school, because
See, I remember the last potluck supper we had, everybody had to hold their plate in their lap because we didn't have enough room to set up tables for all the people. So in order to get all the people in there, you just had to fix your plate and then we built the fellowship hall.
Yeah, I think our outreach has grown,
Yes.
you know, the community.
I think our sponsorship of the refugee families were, for me, a great highlight. We saw this congregation make a difference in people's lives in such a tremendous way, and that was a wonderful kind of hands-on ministry reaching out to a different part of the world. And I also think you talked about building the fellowship hall and the education building, but our baptistry and all the people, all the children, the youth, and the adults that have been baptized and welcomed into the faith. I have to think of those. Those are really special and important ministries that we've done, is to proclaim the gospel by touching people's lives.
Well, we have been blessed with wonderful ministerial leadership throughout the whole 50 years.
Right.
One person after another came and really made a difference.
The big change came when Bill Foster came. And he came, and we could see now the beginning of the rise in numbers. And when you came, you were able to take what Bill had really brought us to, which is better than we'd ever been. And then you've been able to build on that.
What are your hopes for Bonnier Christian Church for the future?
You shouldn't say to continue just the way you are, or not anything.
Right.
But,
I'm pretty sure it'll be here a long time.
But it's so good the way it is.
oh, it is.
Yeah.
It'll grow, people will be happy. Then I can come back and sit a long time from now. It'll still be growing.
That's my hope too. Mabel, do you have a hope for the future of our church?
I was wondering if we offered any kind of, or if we'd ever hope to offer a course that would teach them what the church can mean to your family, say, and how we could be of any help to you.
Okay.
Story of the inner city. Eventually, our community is going to change.
We'll be a part of that.
It will skip over the I-95 over the job and change. And these neighborhoods are going to change, and then our congregations are going to change, and are either going to decline or.
So we have a challenge to meet
Yeah.
as our culture changes and our society changes, how we are going to move into the future.
Right.
Well, I said earlier that nobody knew anything about the disciples of Christ, and that was a handicap earlier. I think it's become a good thing. I don't think we push, I don't know how to say this politely, but I don't think we push religion on people. We let them come here and have whatever it is they want peacefully, and we leave. And that's a good thing.
My hope would be that Bonnier would continue this laboratory of love where we experiment, we do all kinds of things, and laboratory of caring. And that program grows out of that.
That we continue to be faithful witnesses and live out our mission statement to draw close to God, to reach out to others, and to proclaim the gospel. And that we do it in a way that that we continue to be a dynamic and vital congregation. And remember what we are truly about, and as Paul said, that we love Jesus.
Over and around this life, over and around this life, Lord of all, to thee we raise this our joyful